Greetings, children of the screen. Your friendly neighborhood nerd scum here once again, and I am joined by
Logan.
And we're going to be continuing our coverage of, or not coverage, I guess more a discussion of, Crossed, Wish You Were Here, today covering Volume 2. Now, if you missed us covering Volume 1, or the last couple of videos I've had coming out, which are the Cross Sea Day specials, which follow the character Jackson and give you a little bit of his backstory, you can check those videos out at the links popping up now, or down in the description below. Also, if you like this kind of content, then please give the channel a like and make sure to subscribe so you can check out all the dope content we'll have coming out in the future. So, without any further ado, Crossed, Wish You Were Here, Volume 2. Crossed, Wish You Were Here was originally published as a webcomic starting in October of 2012, eventually being printed in physical form spanning 4 volumes. The series is written by Cy Spurrier and drawn by Javier Barrino for Volume 1 and Fernando Milik for Volumes 2 through 4, with inks by Gary Erkson, Lee Townsend, and Keith Williams, colors by Juan Mar, and Juan Rodriguez, with lettering by James Reed. Right on, guys. So, we're going to do this the same as we did in the last video, where we're going to break this down into the A-plot and the B-plot. So, at the end of the last volume, with our A-plot, basically names had been drawn, and Shaky had managed to manipulate things in a way to ensure that he went out on the sortie.
Yeah, the sortie because they need resources, guns,
absolutely,
fuel, food, anything.
It's basically just a supply run with a great Scottish name. So, in this book, we find them setting out on the sortie, and as they get going, it very quickly becomes clear that Shaky has just kind of become the de facto leader of this group, despite the fact that he doesn't really want that responsibility.
He plays it down, but then is like, I must, I guess. Like, he's like, well, someone's got to lead, you know?
Yeah, kinda. Literally, it's one of those things of just like, everyone else who's there just keeps looking at him, and Jackson, who they have managed to convince to come along with them for at least a brief bit of this little...
Until he finds a goat.
Right, until he finds a goat to fuck, he is there for them. But as they, we covered in the last volume, they went and checked out where the boat was and found like these weird people up on crosses and all this weird shit going on. And this time around, as they get to the boat, all of a sudden, freaking artillery starts going off in the water all around
it's
them.
Artillery, I don't know if it's a grenade launch, like, what, mortars, I guess, mortar?
Yeah, I think we find out in Volume 4 what it is exactly, and it's mortars that are being fired at them from the banks. And of course, like, previously we said that they thought this might be a trap, and it turns out it was a trap, just not for that particular journey. It's a trap for this journey, and they just hustle up and get in the fucking boat and start heading out, and as they do, Shaky looks back in the binoculars, and...
sure enough, our girl's there.
Sister Teresa. Just... But, like, luckily they got a motor, and, like, Teresa just got a little dinghy, so they just fucking book it and head out on their way. Yeah. So, that is our first big event of the book.
It seems like a main point in this volume is that they're telling backstories. The characters that are on the sortie. You got Skip, Viceroy, and Tabitha.
Yeah, and Celine.
Celine?
Yeah, Celine.
Oh, she does tell
it. The American.
Yeah, Skip's I thought was pretty wild because he's such a bro show kind of dickhead, and Shaky clearly talks about that. How he feels about him, but Skip kind of opened up a little bit on the boat and was like, hey, like, I ran away and left my paraplegic brother to get eaten by Crossed,
Yeah, and basically, like, bolted with his girlfriend and
their daughter.
Their kid, Actually, this one, I believe they have the son. Yeah, they have the son. Yeah. It's like the other gung-ho Action Jackson dude who's got the daughter who he ignores. While he's banging a girl who's only a couple of years older than her and being a real creepo.
See Volume 1.
See Volume 1 for that. But, and then on top of that, we get Celine's backstory, where, like, her and her husband and her kids, they were out like doing touristy stuff.
Yeah.
And at a certain point, like all hell breaks loose and they're like holed up in a cabin in the woods, but they need food. Someone's got to go out and get stuff, so she goes. And she's never driven the RV before, but she makes it, only to find out that when she comes back, that the sound of the RV starting up attracted the frickin' Crossed, and they are gang raping her family to death.
Yep.
And she narrowly escapes.
Oof.
And
then just drives around and eats in the RV.
Yeah, and eventually makes her way to like another group of survivors who end up hooking up with the people going to Cava. So, and she's the resident American, and she will feature prominently later on in this volume as well. So then there's Tabitha, who like her story's interesting as well. Sad, but interesting as well. So like, she was an art teacher and was banging one of her students.
And they just came out like, yeah.
I mean, I guess in the world they live in at that point, the fact that she was banging like a high school student really isn't...
Yeah, like that's how she started the conversations. It was like, I was fucking my student.
Yeah, I was fucking my student, and she made sure and let everyone know that he was dumb as a sack of bricks.
Yeah.
But very pretty.
Yeah.
And then like after the infection hit, like she hid out in the school. But every day, that boy and 2 other Crossed, who are also infected, would come back to the school as if, like, it's still a built-in pattern of them going to school every day. So she started, like, leaving these art, like, drawings and paintings of the boy she used to fuck out there, trying to see if it would get some kind of response. And one day, it finally did, and he tried to, like, draw his own little painting, and then... he was no longer...
showed a sign of weakness.
Yeah, he was no longer seen as the alpha in that group, and they fucked his shit up, like, good. And I think that's cool because, like, again, it's, like most of these stories, it's heartbreaking, but also for the fact of, like, again, we've seen there's a little romantic stuff getting started between her and Shaky.
Yeah.
It kind of points out how similar they are. You know, like, they're both artistic people, they're both a little bit more thoughtful, but they're also both assholes.
Yeah.
And I think, did you say you wanted to mention Viceroy?
Just he, mostly the way he presented it. It's like near-death experience after near-death experience, and he hasn't gotten to share his bit yet, and he's finally like, well, I want to tell my fucking story before something actually happens. And everyone's like, fuck it, old man, yeah, what's up? Like, what's your thing? And he's, basically it comes down to, he was a fucking psycho. Like, he was, like, always getting shit on, and then one day just found his wife cheating on him and snapped and fucking murdered the guy.
Yeah, murdered both of them, and then went to prison.
Yeah.
And then the outbreak happens, and he just walked out amongst the Crossed like they paid him no attention whatsoever.
Like, he's just always been this fly on the wall.
Right? And so it's one of those weird things, because, like, we see in, like, Cross Plus 100 and in other volumes that certain people who are sociopaths, the Crossed virus doesn't affect them the same way, but this guy's never infected at all.
Yeah.
So, and, like, whenever Beauregard Salt in Cross Plus 100 gets infected, like, none of the other infected will fuck with him, even though he's still acting normal and stuff. So I don't know. It makes me wonder... If
it's like a cheeky callback?
Or, well, it also just makes me wonder if, like, the Viceroy character always had something really messed up and twisted in him that he had been repressing, and that's why he let the world walk all over him. Or if it's just...
like, maybe he deserved it to an extent?
Or if it's maybe just one of those commentaries on the fact that, like, again, when we first are introduced to this guy in Volume 1, Shaky can't even remember his goddamn name. Yeah. He's literally in the character roll call referred to as What's His Name. Yeah. And it's only in this volume that he starts getting referred to as Viceroy. It's definitely interesting, and at one point they try to get Jackson's backstory, and he ain't having it, but, as I mentioned before, yeah, C-Day special. So, as they're out on the sortie, they run into some Crossed, obviously, and we get a couple of cool little, like, pseudo-action sequences. Yeah. And then finally, they run across another group of survivors. And in this group of survivors, you have a few characters who we will get to know kind of well, but again, a lot of that I'm going to leave for you guys when you go and read the book yourselves. The most important one to keep note of, though, is a guy named...
Jasper?
Jasper, yes. Fuck. Jasper, that's it. You got it. Yeah, a guy named Jasper who's the leader of this group, and he's a total asshole, and Shaky hates him. He's kind of just like a fake soldier boy who's just kind of out there pretending that he's king shit who knows what's going on.
When you're dealing with people like Jackson on a daily, this guy's fucking
between Jackson and the gamekeeper, like, Shaky has dealt with enough people who actually know how to handle themselves that he's able to tell a guy who clearly has some aptitude, but a lot of it is him projecting.
Machismo, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. So they don't get along real well, and it's not aided by the fact that, well, they basically give these people the impression that they can go back to Cava with them.
Mm-hmm.
However, they don't tell them that there are only 2 positions open on the boat. And as they start moving along as a group, again, like, they have the boat, so our main group actually is going in the boat from place to place, stopping in different places, whereas the other group then has to go by land and meet up with them.
Mm-hmm.
But every time they get to, like, an obstacle or something that, they have to take care of, basically, Shaky starts manipulating things.
Kind of using them disposably.
Yeah, and he's doing it for 2 different reasons.
Yep.
One is because he wants to see who's capable, like, who deserves those 2 spots on the boat.
Right.
And then on the other hand, it's like, well, if I can get these fuckers to do it, that means...
don't risk my people.
Yeah, my people don't have to do it. So he is, despite his, like, hesitance to take up a leadership role... he is actually... No, he's not dumb, and he's playing the game pretty Machiavellian. Playing the game pretty well for the world that he lives in.
Yeah. One of the things that happened in the sortie, I guess, after meeting with Jasper and everyone, is 2 people leave. One of them being Jackson.
Yeah.
And he just dipped out, not really without saying, probably because Shaky's a cunt. Just like everyone mentions multiple times throughout this trip, is Shaky's a cunt. So...
Yes, because as this goes on and as his manipulation gets more and more, Jackson starts getting really fed up with it. Yeah. And Jackson, for the record, doesn't like most of the people in this other group, and I think if it were up to him, he would just tell them to fuck off, and they would
kill them.
Yeah, and they would just go about their way. But Shaky pulls them in and pulls their strings and dangles this carrot in front of them.
Jackson's watching.
And Jackson, for as nuts as that motherfucker is, he actually does have a pretty firm moral center and isn't cool with it at all.
Which he probably felt like he overstayed his welcome anyway. Like, he didn't really want to probably stay the whole time.
No, I really think that more than anything, it was like he was already planning on going out and doing his own thing, and like they were going in the general direction he wanted to go.
Yeah, exactly.
So once he got tired of him, he's like, fuck this, I'm doing my own thing now.
There's no goats here anyway.
Yeah, I'm gonna go. The goats are over there. I know. I've seen them. I've seen them. And then, interestingly enough, also the other one who bolts is our other Jay, is Jasper. Yeah. Who just basically in the middle of the night one night fucking up and disappears with almost all of their supplies. He just bolts and it's gone. So then that leaves Shaky like now the de facto leader of 2 groups of people because they have no one else who's competent enough to lead. And on top of that, like...
There's no alpha. So,
there's no alpha.
He doesn't really have to contend with anybody.
No, he doesn't
either.
really have to contend with anybody. Both the alphas are gone, so everybody's looking to him. And now these people are technically his people, but he knows that only 2 of them can be. So it puts us in a kind of interesting predicament for this character where, like, the moral quandaries are like building up ever more highly.
Well, we've always thought he was shady, but you start really seeing some stuff that you're like, God dang, man.
And it also, though, makes you question because he's doing shady stuff, but the stuff he's doing is also practical.
Yeah.
So,
absolutely.
It makes you question what you would do in that same situation. Like,
right.
Would you risk, even if you don't necessarily like a lot of the people that you've gotten to know over the last bit of time on Cava, would you risk those people over the people who you just fucking met and who most of them are kind of useless anyway?
Yeah, like you have varying age groups, and of course, like, would you take the older person or the younger? You know what I mean?
Because one of the things that is brought up is they have an old lady in their group who, like, she used to be a dentist, but she hasn't practiced in forever, and she's probably, like, in her 70s or something like that.
So, like, do you take her so you can get 10 years of maybe some kind of shifty medical, help? Or someone that can do hard labor.
Yeah, or there's this dude, Richie, who's, like a 20-year-old kid.
Football star, I think.
Football star, but he was, like, very meek, though, because, like, Jasper really pushed him around, and he's a black kid, and Jasper was openly racist to him pretty much the entire time, which is also something that kind of sours shaky to him because it reminds him a lot of the gamekeeper, I think.
Yeah.
It's never outwardly stated, but by the way that they do the flashbacks from A plot to B plot and how so often his annoyance with Jasper then translates into a flashback about the gamekeeper doing some shady shit, it feels that way for sure. And then there's also, like, a guy named Mark, who's just, like, a wisecracking dude who throws out pop culture references.
Super goofy.
Yeah, just a goofy motherfucker. You also have, who is it? Miranda, who's, like, this big, tough Amazon chick.
Oh, yeah.
And
some kind of Samoan.
Yeah, like, she is very useful. I don't think she has necessarily, like, military training, but she's very athletic. She's
definitely using a gun.
Yeah, she knows how to handle herself. So, yeah, like, he's definitely put in this very precarious situation where, like, yeah, now I'm stuck leading all these motherfuckers, and most of you are useless, and even the ones of you who aren't useless, I ain't got room for you.
Right.
So, I guess I'm the asshole. At that point, after they have pretty much gotten almost everything else on their list, even with the stuff that asshole dude swiped, they managed to make up for it and get the majority of everything they need on their list, except for ammunition. And where they're going to go for that is this frickin'...
They had marks for it, but it looks like they got to, like, I guess their last big one, which is this...
Fortress, essentially, yeah.
Military base.
It's this military base that's, like, out in the middle of nowhere, and, like, there is a little bit of road access to it, but they decide to approach it by water because they think that'd be safer, but they find it just completely fucking surrounded by Crossed. And there's, like, a big sign up there that's like, go the fuck away, but they manage to, like, making makeshift signs to communicate with the soldiers, figure out a way
like
that
trade.
They can make an exchange, because the inside they need medical supplies and things of that nature, and our guys really want ammo and guns. So they devised this basic way where one of their people, what they're going to do is have a car go up near the fort and, like, get all the Crossed to follow them, because the Crossed aren't particularly bright.
Yeah.
And then basically one of their people can then make it into the fort, and they'll do the same thing for it to go. And at this point, like, they end up deciding on Celine being the one to do it, and I think it's mostly because she's been terrified this whole trip, and freaking has not... She's been...
Worthless.
Yeah, worthless this whole trip. And there's a really great moment before she goes where, like, she gets all made up. You know? Like, as if she's
helmet, fucking lipstick.
Where she's just like, if I'm gonna die, I'm gonna die looking good. And she asks Shaky, like, how do I look? And his inner monologue is like, Jesus, look at you.
Yeah.
You know, Shaky being an asshole again.
Best bait.
Yeah. But, you know, he tells her what she needs to know so that she feels empowered so that she can go do this thing.
Yeah.
They get the thing done, and it works out great, and then when it comes time for her to come back out, they send the car around, and nothing fucking happens.
Yep. Should be gone.
Yeah. So they end up trying this multiple times, and eventually there is kind of a little bit of an argument because Shaky keeps sending the people from the secondary group.
Yeah. Which is risking them every time.
Every single time.
I think at one point one of them does get... fucked up, I think.
Well, in the very last time that group goes, one of them gets shot. Or not shot, but, like, they get hurt. Shot through the leg, or, like, a spear through the leg or something when it comes through there. They're not infected, but they are wounded, at which point, like, Viceroy decides, since he's had his, like, string of luck...
That's right.
Yeah, that he's going to do the last run for them to try it out. And, of course, the car fucking dies while he's out there. But, of course, it's Viceroy, and he keeps... He's described as a character who always manages to get himself into shit and then somehow...
Immediately out.
Somehow just
works.
Scrapes by.
Yeah.
So yeah, basically nothing's working, so they camp down for the night, and then in the middle of the night there's a giant explosion from the fort. Yep. So they wait hours until they hear nothing else happening.
It was explosion, gunshots.
Yeah,
I mean,
just an all-out war going on over there. So finally, when things clear down and they decide to go over there, of course they find everybody's fucking dead, and there's a human Crossed, everybody's dead. There is a huge hole blown in the side of the fort. Everybody's fucking dead except for one little baby Crossed, who, you know, Shake puts down fairly easily. They're shit out of luck. You know, there's a few guns here and there, but, like, they lost all these medical supplies. They lost Celine. And as Shaky's, like, walking through this, the part of him that's a writer starts trying to put it together in his head.
Right. He's like, okay, surely this is what happened. Yeah. And it kind of illustrates that.
And he kind of engineers this story where, like, well, of course what happened. We sent a woman into a fort full of soldiers who are just dudes who he's just assuming they're all
right,
dudes.
assuming.
And they've been there this whole time by himself. So, of course, what happened? They stole the supplies, and then they took her and tried to rape her, but she managed to get loose and, like, stab one of them and get to a grenade and run out over by the wall, all, like, stark naked, and then blow it up in, like, one final big, you know, explosion of a heroic act.
Yeah.
And he's like, good on you, Celine. Of course, as we'll find later on, that's not exactly the way things played out. But, yeah, at that point, that's pretty much all they can do on this sortie. And now with Celine gone, they have one more place available on the ship.
They actually draw lots or straws,
Yeah.
or whatever, for the 3 slots. And it was Mark?
Yeah, Mark, Richie, and Miranda.
Yeah, so Richie the goofy guy.
Yeah.
Mark the football player.
No. Richie is the football player.
Football.
Mark is the
really
weird
goofy
pop
fucker.
culture guy.
Yeah.
And then obviously the Amazon. They all get to go, and there's this really sad shot of them like heading out, leaving the old woman who was the dentist sitting on the dock, just going, "Please don't leave me."
And then everybody else turned looking at Shaky.
Yeah.
Going, cunt.
Right, just going cunt, and he's like, "What? There's no fucking room. Yeah. Whatever."
Yeah.
And so they head back to Cava. So when they finally get back to Cava and they start like heading back in, all of a sudden they meet Jasper.
Made it.
This motherfucker made it to the island based off of 2 things. All the things Shaky said about it, which was limited, but this is also when we find out that like throughout the course of this story, we've seen Shaky writing these letters and having these letters. And as frickin' Jasper left, we saw like a piece of paper on the ground, and it turns out that Shaky has been writing letters to Sister Teresa.
Yeah, Aeolian or whatever.
Yeah, basically just telling her like, hey, I found a good place with some good people, and he clearly knows that she's turned and is basically like, don't come here.
Yeah.
Because they will kill you.
Yeah.
And as much as like he knows she's a crossed, he still doesn't want to see that happen to her.
We're armed and dangerous.
Yeah.
Alone.
So like Jasper is on the frickin' island. He's slowly wiggling his way into like some level of control because he is such a like alpha male who's kind of forcing his hand around the island.
Yeah.
And
clearly stronger than Dawn and Rab, or so we think.
Right. And then also there's a few people on the island who are angry enough and want to strike back at the cross enough that they're listening to him. And he's told them all about not only this letter letters that Shaky was leaving all over the place, which puts the whole island in jeopardy, but also what a cunt Shaky was being on the sortie.
Yep.
So now, pretty much everybody on the island hates him.
Yep.
With exception of Tabitha, who he and Tabitha start banging in secret. Not long after that, though, one night he wakes up with a knife to his throat.
Yep.
And frickin'
Jaspy.
It's Jaspy. And, like, Jasper takes him outside and they have a little bit of a confrontation, but it eventually ends with, essentially Jasper, like,
I'm not afraid to kill you.
I'm not afraid to kill you, so fuck off.
Yeah.
So Shaky...
Stop trying to start shit.
Yeah.
I'm the captain now.
Yeah, it's not even, like, stop trying to start shit. It's more just a matter of, like, no one trusts you. No one trusts you. I made sure that you're on the outs. You were trying to boss me around before, but this is the way things are.
Yeah.
So, like, you don't even get to stay in the safe part of the island, and Shaky essentially gets exiled out to a little cabin on the frickin' shoreline. Yeah. It's one of those things where, like, everybody hates him, and they're constantly calling him a cunt, but they're also keeping it relatively cordial. Yeah. You know? Right. Like, for the most part, no one else is, like, in his face, like, fuck you, and all this kind of stuff. Most of them are just like, hey, what's up? Because
maybe they deep down understand, but they don't like it anymore.
No, he still put them in danger. So, most of the time it's like, they give him a nod, and then as he walks by, they're like, cunt.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what they do. So even though they exiled him, of course, inevitably, Dawn and Rab are going to come see him, right? Yeah. Because, I mean... He went on the thing, they gave him a list, he did exactly what he was supposed to do. He's still a cunt, but they have other business now with him.
Yeah, and especially because, as we said, frickin' Jasper is kind of starting to rally support to him, as opposed to Rab and Dawn.
Yeah,
because
they can't have that.
No, they can't have that. So, like... Yeah, man, like, I mean, he's getting all these people to go out on these little mini sorties, and he's basically trying to convince them. Yeah, they're loving it. And he is for everything that Shaky did that put them in danger, they see that what this dude is doing, what Jasper is doing, in the end is going to be far more damaging. There's no way for them to live like that and remain hidden and remain safe. So they essentially come to Shaky, the shadiest, most manipulative motherfucker on the island, to be like, something has to be done. And Shaky's like, you want me to kill him?
Yeah.
And they're like,
Yeah, you just make him disappear. You don't have to kill him.
Yeah, and despite the fact that Shaky really kind of agrees with him, at the same time he's like, no one's been sticking up for me, fuck y'all.
Yeah, right? It's like, this is pathetic.
Yeah. But luckily for all of them, Shaky doesn't have to make a decision because, like so many things in this world, that decision gets made for him. Sometimes your decisions in the world of the Crossed are completely out of your hands, and one night, on one of these little, like, mini sorties that Jasper has them out doing, they come back after curfew, meaning that him, Viceroy, and Richie can't get inside of the most protected area. Yeah. So instead they pull up on the shore next to the cabin that Shaky's staying in, and basically, dude tries to force Shaky to, like, help them load the crap out of the boat, and, like, stay up in the house.
Here.
Yeah. And, like, Shaky is just done with this guy's shit. And basically it leads to kind of an altercation where Home Dude pulls a rifle on him.
A shotgun? Like a sawed-off gun?
Yeah, and Shaky just kind of stares him down, and the guy finally shows that, like, he's not bluffing and pulls the trigger, and when he pulls the trigger, the fucking gun explodes in his goddamn hands.
Yeah, because it's an old
gun.
It's
an old piece of shit. And also, these are weapons and things that they found just lying out.
Yeah.
And they were clearly sabotaged, because in this explosion, Richie dies. He gets shrapnel in his head, because he's, like, right on the other side, and he dies. And Viceroy gets hit with a bullet. And Shaky goes into the whole thing about, you are the luckiest cunt motherfucker that I have ever met in my life.
Right, everybody around you just got fucked.
Yeah.
And you're fine.
And that's when Viceroy tells him, Shaky, the bullets have shit on them.
Yeah.
And he's infected. So, like, kind of Shaky did in the first volume with the woman who killed herself on the island, basically Shaky sits with him until he actually starts to turn and then kills him. Mm-hmm. And then the next day, whenever none of these people have shown back up, they start, the people on the island start looking for him and eventually find Shaky in his cabin with frickin' Home Dude, who's not dead yet.
Yeah, I mean, he did have his arm basically blown
off, and he's still unconscious and bleeding out and stuff, and then also with the dead body of the boy, Richie. And, it's kind of like, oh well, I guess fate kind of solved that problem for us, didn't it? But at the same time, now that they have this opportunity, and this guy's gonna die anyway, Shaky's like, everyone already fucking hates me. We need to try to... This was clearly a trap that was set for us. At this point, like, he is starting to get the point that this group of Crossed with Sister Teresa that are watching him...
Far more intelligent.
They're more organized. Yeah. There's something else going on there. They're not your typical Crossed. So he decides to set a trap for them. And what they do is they take motherfucker out on, as he's dying and bleeding to death, out on this little fucking island, and they put a freaking...
Like just a little thing of rocks, really.
Yeah,
it's
really.
Not even, because, like, water is hitting it. And...
Yeah, it's not even a little island. It's a little rock embankment. It's one of the reasons why you can't get a bigger boat up in this area, is because of all these little things. And they take him out there, and they put him there with a landmine, and they just leave him, because they know that when he wakes up, he's going to start screaming, and that will hopefully attract the Crossed, and when it does, they'll be able to blow them all to hell. And that's pretty much what happens, with the little exception. He starts screaming, and then the boats start coming. Shaky looks out there as they see this boat coming up, and sure enough, there's Sister Teresa with her whole little entourage, and with frickin' Celine.
Yep.
And she didn't die in the fort. So his whole story that he concocted in his head...
Bullshit.
Like, trying to find some, last shred of, brilliant fight of humanity.
And he even said, you should have known better.
Yeah, you should have fucking known better. No. Yeah. Of course that useless bitch is still alive, and of course now she's gonna make things more fucking complicated.
Yep. And so can't blow her up.
No.
I mean, he could.
He could, and actually I think he very much would have.
Yeah.
Except for the fact that...
Everyone else.
As that boat with Cross starts getting closer, they realize it's a trap.
Yeah.
and they just turn around. And at that point, Shaky's like, well, fuck! Gah! And hits the button to blow up the landmine, hoping that he'll get them.
Yeah, maybe some shrapnel,
Yeah,
something. Just fuck them up a little.
But they're too far away.
Disable the boat, even.
Yeah, but they're too far away. Yeah. And this volume ends with the other people on the island looking out and seeing Sister Teresa and putting together that, you know, it's the person that he was writing the letters to.
Yep.
And it ends with them just kind of questioning him as like, who is she? Who is she to you? And he's basically just like,
fuck off.
Fuck off. I don't want to talk about it. Leave
Yeah.
me alone. Like, all you fuckers are dead. All you fuckers have turned against me. I don't owe you shit at this point.
Even if I told you, you'd probably just, you know.
Yeah.
Be like, well, that's fucking bullshit.
So yeah, that's our A plot. Our B plot,
heavy,
as everything in this book is, continues to follow the ongoing saga of Shaky and his original group of survivors with the gamekeeper, and when we last left them off, they had just met up with Sister Teresa.
Yeah.
The gamekeeper really wants Sister Teresa to come with them, because he needs that nun ass.
Yeah.
You know? And I guess he's getting a little bored of, you know...
Homeboy's girlfriend?
Yeah.
Or wife?
The Lord's girlfriend, or fiance or whatever.
Yeah.
So basically, like, yeah, the first thing we get in this is, like, the area that she was staying at where she was taking care of all the old people. Essentially, frickin' the gamekeeper heads out one day with his little sidekick guy and then knocks him out and takes all the supplies and then sets off the fire alarms in the building, forcing basically Shaky and Teresa and all the others to run out and leave all the old people to die.
Yep.
And then he's basically just like, I did you a favor, you cunts.
Yep. Teresa's in the group now.
So she's part of the crew.
Yeah, so she gets to see how everything goes, including how the gamekeeper just seems to... It gets more and more frequent of him just being like, hey, I need my wanky sucked now.
Yeah.
Rent's due.
And obvious. And
right.
It's not just blowjobs anymore either.
It's just straight banging. In the rain, sleet, snow, doesn't matter.
Yeah, and finally, one night, frickin' Floyd, you know, Agnes's fiance, the Lord, has enough.
Yeah, so, I mean, because they're right outside the door, really.
Yeah, I mean, literally, they're close enough that from the inside of the room where everyone is, you can hear what's happening outside.
And she's, you know, begging and
not
about it. And Floyd's like, you know what?
Yep.
That's it.
Floyd finally mans up, and what does he get for it?
Shot in the dick.
He gets shot in the fucking dick, and then literally spends the last few moments of his life bleeding out, being forced to watch this old man just fucking slamming his old lady from behind. And then, like, of course, he bleeds out, and freaking Sister Teresa comes out and manages to stop the gamekeeper dead in his tracks.
Just be like, hey,
stop. And, like,
fucking disgusting.
Yeah, and for some reason, I guess it's like him being challenged by her, and, like, again, we don't get a whole lot about the gamekeeper and, like, his background or anything like that. But something
don't really want to.
Don't really want to either. I think he's a more interesting character without it, with him being kind of an anomaly that you don't really understand. Because, like, when Sister Teresa tells him to stop, he just stops.
Yeah.
And, like, this guy who won't take shit from anyone or won't listen to anyone, all of a sudden this nun is like, stop what you're doing right now. And he just does. And this gives Agnes the chance to run away. And we don't really see how that situation amongst the main group resolves. The next thing that we get is them finding Agnes's body.
Yeah.
She ran into the woods and hung herself. And at this
wanted to join Floyd.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, like, they stuck together that whole time. She did whatever she had to do to keep them together and alive. And with him gone, she just has, and with everything she's been through.
She's not going to keep paying rent.
No, absolutely fucking not. And it's interesting because the gamekeeper freaks the fuck out.
He actually...
Like, he starts...
Like, had emotion over it.
Like, he starts beating her corpse with his gun and screaming at her that she's a stupid cunt. But while he's doing it, he's crying.
Yeah.
And this is the
most uncomfortable. It's actually really bizarre.
Right. Like, in his own twisted, like, obsessed mind, there was some kind of connection between them. Beyond, like, in his mind, he clearly had built up some kind of emotional connection to her that somehow managed to, like, put aside what he was doing to her. It's bizarre, and this is the moment where Shaky decides to grow a pair of fucking balls and, like, step up to him and for it he gets a shotgun pointed in his face. But the Gameskeeper doesn't pull the trigger, and from this point on, the Gameskeeper is kind of keeps himself separated from the group.
Yeah.
A little bit. I mean, he's still part of the group, and he still sometimes shows up for food, and he'll like leave them like written messages as they're going, telling them which way to go and things of that nature. Like, he still clearly wants to be needed, but everything that's happened has affected him in some way that we're not given real insight into because we never see him when he's alone, since the story's told from Shaky's point of view, which is valid. It's valid, and I prefer it that way because, again, being told from Shaky's point of view, it wouldn't make fucking sense for us to see. All we can get is what Shaky thinks in his head, and as we saw from like the whole fort situation, the story he concocted in his head and put together for that,
totally wrong.
Yeah, no. He said it before. He's not the best writer, so whatever he would have come up with is just going to be some kind of cliched shit. It's far more interesting to leave it this way. But despite the fact that he's staying separate, he still always has this obsessive gaze on Teresa. And one night, while Shaky is out having a smoke break, the Gameskeeper returns. And his little sidekick dude, Ashok, who pretty much has been his whipping boy, the same as Richie was to, you know, the dickhead Jasper, the dickhead pseudo soldier boy. Basically, the Gameskeeper strangles him out in his sleep. And later on, we'll find out that this doesn't actually kill him, but he does lose oxygen enough that it basically turns him into a child. Yeah. But for all intents and purposes, at this moment, he's believed to be dead. And then the Gameskeeper rapes Teresa. And
that thing we thought he was going to do but never did or built for.
Yeah.
It happened.
He also carves in the X that we see, you know, like all the other cross tend to have the normal cross, but she has an X on her face. And we see that originated from a scar that he gave her because she wouldn't stop looking at him while he was raping her. And in the midst of this, Shaky comes in and finds Ashok and then finds what's happening. And he can see in Teresa's eyes a look of like, don't. Yeah. Like, don't do anything.
Even in this, she's not like,
kill this guy. Like, she is still full of that much compassion. Like, she's not giving him his way. Again, she won't stop looking at him and things of that nature. Yeah. But she also doesn't want him dead. At which point the Gameskeeper sees Shaky pointing the gun at him. Yeah. And just goes, "You don't have the boom!" And Shaky just fires one off at him.
Because he's more human, I guess, or is human and doesn't have the self-control that Teresa does.
One thing that we've kind of skipped and glossed over a little bit here, because it really becomes more prominent in later volumes, but there has been a relationship forming between Teresa and Shaky throughout the course of this. There is actually one night where the Gameskeeper seems as if he's going to go and rape
look for her.
Because basically Agnes takes a bunch of pills and passes out, and her husband decides to stay with her that night. And you can just see that the Gameskeeper, if her husband wasn't there, would have just fucked her while she was half dead and passed out. And at that point, Shaky convinces Teresa to pretend like she's having sex with him so that the Gameskeeper will leave them alone. Yep. And this kind of starts a relationship where, like, you know, it's not sexual in nature, but there's very much a romantic relationship forming
and
there.
He clearly wants to protect her. And
and sees her as someone who is good beyond what the world they live in seems to allow. No matter what she wants in that moment, he reacts emotionally and shoots the Gameskeeper. And that is kind of where our B-plot closes out for this volume. Yep. So, holy shit.
Dude, we got a little bit of world building in Volume 1, a little bit of character development, and this one just came in heavy.
Hell yeah, it does. And overall, I would say that, like, Volume 2 is as good, if not a little bit better than Volume 1.
Yeah, I agree.
The action is definitely kicked up a notch. The pace is kicked up a notch. The transitional issues we were talking about in the first book is a little bit cleaner. There's definitely more motivation for each of those kind of transitions from the A-plot to the B-plot. What were some of the highlights for you?
Definitely Viceroy. Any little bit with it at first, like, he does seem worthless, and he is worthless, but fascinating character. I mean, really, just to make someone portrayed so worthless and to be so, I guess, like, interesting was wild.
I mean,
and then
because it's not even that he's worthless, he's just kind of invisible.
yeah, he's just there.
Yeah, he keeps to himself, he's quiet, Yeah. And it's not until they go out on the sortie that, like, Shaky even really gets an idea of who this fucking guy is.
Right. I mean, he even, at one point, it seemed like he was like, why the fuck can't I get rid of Celine or Viceroy for another one of these people in this other group?
Yeah, because they're that fucking useless to me.
And then the second, I guess, would be the just the intelligence of this group. Like, we're starting to get this looming threat feeling of, like, we're out here doing things, and it's not just the dumb cross that we're dealing with. Like, there is fucking people out here smarter than we think.
Right.
And it's building.
Yeah.
Tension. And
there is a scene that we neglected to speak about that also shows another level to this going on, where, like, this group of crossed has a pseudo-ritualistic aspect to them. Because on the way back to the island, there is a point where on the way back to Cava, they see, like, a fire in the distance, and Shaky goes to investigate, and it is Teresa with all her cross performing, like, some kind of weird pseudo-sexual ritual.
Celebratory,
where, like, they're stapling up the cross on her face, despite the fact that it doesn't need it, because they're crossed, obviously, and then there's a fair amount of sexual activity going on here. The other thing I wanted to mention, like, with Viceroy also, because something else that we kind of skimmed over, but is something that will become important in later volumes, and I think it's really interesting. Within this group of crossed, there's one guy who is covered from head to toe in black plastic. And he's got, like, oven mitts on.
Yeah, and like a welding hood?
And a welding hood,
yeah. With like a short little visor.
Right, and there's even a scene with Viceroy where he's about to be killed by some of the crossed.
Yeah. And this guy
saves his ass.
Mm-hmm. But he's seen multiple times with this group.
Yeah.
Of cross.
So, like, we know for a fact that he's with that group of cross, but for some reason he's protecting the humans that are under Shaky's watch. And not like when Shaky's around, either. It's not like a message that's being sent. It's clearly that there is a higher purpose that this group of crossed is working towards that we, as of yet, are not privy to. So yeah, those were both really interesting elements, and I really liked the way that they dovetailed. Yeah. And, like, it made Viceroy important to the overall story.
Yeah, so when he dies, you're kind of a little more... I guess vested as well.
Right. Like, not only do we get to know him better and do we get to develop him a little bit more and get to see him step out of his comfort zone, but he is actually important to the building of the ongoing narrative in multiple ways. So yeah, those are both really solid. And as for me, my favorite things in this book, or the highlights for me, we kind of already touched upon most of them. But I really like how we kind of dive into the more Machiavellian nature of Shaky.
Yeah, dominant.
In the first volume, it really just comes mostly towards the end of that book where we see him trying to get himself out on the sortie. Yeah. Because he's so bored, he'd rather go out and risk dying than have to be stuck there anymore.
And that's more his shady nature anyway.
Yeah.
Like, here we see a little more...
In this book, like, the level of kind of shady connivingness comes out even more, but we also see it in a way that isn't specifically designed to benefit him only.
Yeah, like, he's not super malicious, like, it's not that we don't like him, right? Like, we're not going to sit there and not admit that it's shady or crappy, but, you know...
And again, what makes it compelling is the fact that he never tries to make it seem like he thinks he's doing a good thing. He is doing what he views as necessary, but even he doesn't really agree with some of his actions and some of his methods.
Right.
And I think that that creates a really interesting, compelling, and complex main character for us to follow along with.
Absolutely.
The other thing that I really, really enjoyed, again, is, like, when it comes to the A plot and the B plot, we're starting to see certain character archetypes appear in both. So, specifically in this one, you have the gamekeeper, and you have fucking Soldier Boy from Group 2. Yeah, Jasper. I keep forgetting his name because he's a dick.
He's a piece of shit. And he's not around very long,
and
so it
after
matter.
This volume, he doesn't fucking matter anymore.
Yeah, so.
But Jasper, like, him and the gamekeeper have a lot in common. And we start to see the way that, like, both of those people being introduced into a Shaky story drives that narrative in similar directions.
Yeah.
Both of them are very much about control and power. It just so happens that the ways in which they want to feel that control and that power are different.
Yeah.
But we see Shaky's reaction to both of them, and we see how both of them push Shaky into being more of that conniving, manipulative character that we see in this book.
Yeah.
So, again, that's very, very well handled. I really enjoyed both those things, and in general, the B-plot in this book, despite being super disturbing, I found to be very, very, very well handled. I definitely enjoyed that bit of it more than I did in the first volume.
Agreed, 100%.
So, was there anything in this volume that you didn't care for, or any complaints?
It's not so much complaint, maybe, not critique or maybe like a hate of the book itself. It's just you touched on it barely, but we are reading this from Shaky's point of view. So there's aspects in the book that we're not going to get. Like we don't know what the fuck's going on in Cava while we're on this sortie.
True.
Or we don't know what the gamekeeper's doing while he's gone.
Right.
And we don't know what's going on when Shaky's not around, because all of it's just either imaginary or it's from his perspective. So, that sometimes, it's my own personal, just like, I want to know though, I just want some more of that drama.
For me personally, again, I have minor critiques or complaints. But in reality, it's all the same stuff from Volume 1, except to a much lesser degree.
Yeah.
As I said...
it improved.
Yeah, almost. It definitely improved. Because, again, my original critiques were that Shaky kind of leans on... Or the writer, Cy Spurrier, kind of leans on the fact that Shaky is not a particularly good writer to kind of... It almost felt like take an easy way out in certain scenes, and there are far less instances of that in this book.
It feels almost, when he does say it, it's more cheeky rather than a cop-out.
And he takes that and turns it to his advantage by doing the whole thing about Shaky imagining what happens inside the fort and it being completely fucking wrong.
Right. And he mentions it after he's Sicilian, so it's like...
So it's like he manages to take that thing that I found kind of annoying in the first volume and actually do something with it. And then the other thing that I had an issue with in the first volume was the transitioning between the A and B plots, which we've already stated is so much better in this. It works so well that, honestly, those are literally, minor nitpicks that I have, and they are minuscule in comparison to all the things that are awesome in this book. Right on, children of the screen. So, those are our thoughts on Crossed. Wish You Were Here, Volume 2. Logan, is this a recommend?
Yeah, dope.
Fuck yes, this is a recommend. If you're not reading this fucking book, why the fuck aren't you reading this fucking book? Go read this fucking book. This video's already getting demonetized. Not that my channel's monetized at this point.
We already talked about rape and we said cunt. That's pretty heavy here in America.
Yeah,
so.
It's probably one of the reasons why these discussion videos are not getting shared with my subscribers as much is because I'm actually talking about all these things that in my other videos where I'm covering the books, I can find flowery language to get around without actually hitting all these things. But yeah, the book is absolutely fantastic, and if you haven't had a chance to read it, I definitely recommend it. We are going to be covering Volumes 3 and Volumes 4. If you missed the first volume, again, there's going to be a link down in the description below. And if you like this video, please leave a like and share it with some friends. Also, if you're not subscribed to the channel, make sure to hit that little subscribe so you can check out all the dope cross content I have coming out every 2 weeks. Right on, children of the screen. Thank you guys very much.
Deuces.
Nerd scum. Out.
Crossed. No, crossed.
Well, she's crossed.
She's crossed.
They're crossed.
Well, she's crisscrossed. They're crossed.
She's crisscross makes you jump.
God, no.